Hello, I'm your host, Brian Callanan. In the wake of some pointed criticism from a departing city council member, Seattle leaders have some questions to answer and a new vacancy to fill. Plus, council members are reckoning with a mixed economic forecast following a challenging budget writing process. I'm with council members Dan Strauss and Rob Saka to discuss these issues and the questions you're sending in too, right here on City Inside Out, Council Edition.
Reform work is a continuous, ongoing journey. It's a perilous journey towards transformation that we're all on individually and collectively, and this police department is no different.
Because the city of Seattle is limited to a 1% property tax increase per year, when we have 7% inflation, it can't keep up.
All that and more coming up next on City Inside Out, Council Edition. Thank you once again for joining us on City Inside Out, Council Edition. I'm your host, Brian Callanan, and for this episode, we have with us Councilmember Rob Saka, who represents District 1 from West Seattle out to Pioneer Square. He's also the Council's Transportation Committee Chair as well. Good to have you aboard here, Councilmember Saka.
Thank you, Brian. Good afternoon. Excited to be here today.
Let's do this thing. Also with us is Dan Strauss, Councilmember from District 6, from Fremont to Ballard. He's also the Council's Budget Committee Chair. Welcome, Councilmember Strauss.
Thank you, Brian. I can't forget Magnolia or Green Lake or Finney Ridge. And
absolutely.
I'd say, we're elected by the people in our district and we serve all Seattle.
All right, I was waiting for that list. Thank you very much. I did want to bring up, at this time last year, you were preparing to fill a vacancy for a less than a year term on the council with the departure of Councilmember Mosqueda to the King County Council. This year, there is another vacancy, as Councilmember Tammy Morales is leaving her job with three years remaining in her term. Her last day is January 6th. She said a number of things about why she is leaving, including this letter to her constituents on December 4th, which read in part, "I am worried about the future of this institution and my place in it. For the last 11 months, this council has eroded our checks and balances as a legislative department and undermined my work as a policymaker." I know this is a challenging situation for the council, so I wanted to bring it up right off the top of the show. Councilmember Saka, what is your reaction to what Councilmember Morales has said about feeling attacked, essentially, and feeling like the council doesn't have proper checks and balances?
Yeah, so first off, I want to thank Councilmember Morales for her steadfast service to the city over these last 5 years. Listen, everyone is entitled to share their own views and speak their own truths, and I don't, I respect that. And I can't comment on her perceptions of everyone or the institution more generally, but I can self-reflect on how I personally show up in my interaction and engagement with Councilmember Morales, and I have been very collaborative and accommodating and doing my best to work with her, no different than I have with all of my esteemed colleagues.
Okay.
And so I'm sorry that she feels that way, but I do want to thank her for her service to the city, and I wish her nothing but the best in her future endeavors.
That whole idea of not having proper checks and balances, your thoughts there?
I think we have charter enshrined checks and balances. I don't know, what does that mean? Is there a specific solution that's being proposed, or I don't, yeah.
Okay, all right. I wanted to make sure I brought up every piece that she was talking about here. Councilmember Strauss, maybe I can get your reaction to what Councilmember Morales has said about really the institution of the City Council, because I think she had some things to say there that were, I know a lot of council members took pretty hard.
Yeah, and thanks for bringing this up, Brian, because like Councilmember Saka, I want to thank Councilmember Morales for her service. She and I were elected at the same time, and served with her on the Association of Washington Cities Board. And what will say to you right now is the same things that I've said on the record already. But to respond to your question directly, Council President Nelson has handled things differently than I would have. I have seen her handle things differently than the past 3 council presidents: Council President Juarez, Council President Gonzalez, and Council President Harrell. I'll leave that at that because I'm not here to air dirty laundry, but just to say I have seen decisions be made in a way that I would not have. But what I shared with Councilmember Morales on the dais is in her and my first 6 months, we faced a pandemic,
right,
a recession, a civil rights reckoning, and then civil unrest. And all of those things actually happened in 4 months. We just had 2 months to get ready for the job.
Right.
And what I said to her is I was sorry that for these last 11 months, her time has been more difficult than those 6 months.
Do you believe that was the case? It just seemed like she was dealing with things that were worse than the pandemic era. Is that what you're saying?
I can't speak for Councilmember Morales. You'll have to invite her on the show.
Okay.
But you know, like
bit, yeah.
that's what I said to her. That's how I feel. Okay. And for all council members, this is a hard job. We saw Council President Deborah Juarez have death threats. We saw Councilmember Herbold have rocks thrown through her window. Mm-hmm. We've seen past council members have their children bullied at school based off of the decisions they were making on behalf of all Seattleites. It's a tough job.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I would like to move on to what happens next because the council now has to appoint someone to fill the District 2 position in January. It'll be a roughly 9-10 month appointment here. Then the public would vote for a D2 council member next fall for a 2-year term until the seat is up for a vote again in 2027. Hope everyone's following me on that one. Councilmember Saka, I received a question from one of our viewers, Robin, about this, who asks this. Will the council look for someone who is filling the seat on an interim basis only, not running in November 2025, or do they want someone who wants to stay on council? Are you looking for that candidate for the future or more of a caretaker for this role?
Yeah, thank you, Brian. And thank you, Robin, for that excellent question. I will share that how I'm currently approaching it and thinking about the situation today, at this moment in time. I think we'll have the opportunity to take this issue up in earnest once we return from council recess in early January. But yeah, where I'm at today, middle of December, I'm currently thinking about a caretaker for this role. As Councilmember Strauss aptly alluded to, this is a tough job, and you know it's hard for everyone involved. Mm-hmm. And this person, whoever it is, whether they choose to stay on as a caretaker or run in parallel, like they're going to have to get up to speed really quickly. Mm. Look, there's a lot of smart people. I have a lot of smart colleagues on this. Well, not on this floor, but on the second floor of City Hall. And people who've done really amazing things before they got to this distinguished institution. And you can be as smart as you want and be as accomplished as you want, and you still are going to have a very steep learning curve. Mm-hmm. And so, unlike the citywide selection vacancy process, this is a much more narrower section and cross-section of potential candidates. Right. And so I want to make sure that, for me personally, I want to make sure that this person is set up for success, that their constituents in District 2 are set up for success, mm-hmm. our colleagues here in the council are set up for success, and the tax-paying public. And where I'm thinking about it today, I think it's a 50, 60-hour-a-week job minimum to do the day-to-day of our job, mm-hmm. plus campaigning an extra 50, 60 on top of that if you're doing everything right, mm-hmm. on at least. Mm-hmm. To get up to speed and do all those things, it's just a very tall order. That said,
we'll see what happens.
The right person might just come out and surprise me, but currently that's how I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking about a caretaker only.
Councilmember Strauss, some thoughts on this?
I love working with Councilmember Rob Saka.
Okay.
Man, took the words right out of my mouth.
Okay, you're on the same page there?
In the middle of December, mm-hmm. You can't hold me to it. I might vote for somebody that says that they will run. Mm-hmm. But having a caretaker and having somebody that knows land use policy, because we're taking up the comprehensive plan this year. Yeah. I'll just kind of riff on what Councilmember Saka just said.
Please.
In a different way. I was staff for City Council for 2 years before becoming an elected official. Mm-hmm. When I became a council member, I moved my desk probably between 25 and 40 feet.
Right.
And I had been staffing elected officials for a decade, and it was still a steep learning curve. Mm-hmm. When I ran for re-election, I was already a sitting council member. To do the job of a council member and to run an election, I already had experience in both. Sure. I'd already run a campaign, right. I'd already been a council member, mm-hmm. and I was doing both at the same time. And that was one of the toughest experiences I've had, just purely on time. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And what is important for me is that District 2 has a representative that represents the people of that district, and that they're able to focus on what they need to. For me, that means a caretaker who has land use experience. That's kind of a very unique skill set, all combined in one human.
Right.
If we're not able to find it, I'm excited for applications to open, I believe, on
January 2nd. Yeah.
January 2nd.
And it goes to the 9th. So get in those applications if you're so inclined. Let me follow up on a bonus question from Robin here, if I could. Will the new appointee be chair of the Land Use Committee? And if so, do they need someone well-versed in land use planning so that person can shepherd the comprehensive plan through the process? You're vice chair of the Land Use Committee, and it's a very important group. The comp plan set to be updated in a few months. This is basically the roadmap for where Seattle's going to grow over the next 20 years here. How's the Land Use Committee going to work? I know there's been some stuff going on here, some other council members stepping up.
Yeah, so I was the land use chair for 4 years.
Right.
It was a really fun job, and land use policy is dense as can be. I'm excited to remain as the vice chair, and I'm also excited that Joy Hollingsworth has been appointed to lead us through the Select Comprehensive Plan Committee.
Yep.
That said, as my understanding is, Council President hasn't said anything else, which is that they will retain that committee chairship, Land Use Committee, which
That
is
D2 appointee will? Okay.
that is different than the Select Committee on the Comprehensive Plan.
Got it.
The
Okay.
Select Committee is all 9 council members.
Yep.
The Land Use Committee will probably have less work this year because of the comprehensive plan.
Okay.
I stand ready to support Councilmember Hollingsworth in everything that she needs, and I stand ready to support the appointee, whoever they are, in managing the Land Use Committee.
Great. If I could, I wanted to jump back to the budget process with you. The council, of course, approved an $8.3 billion budget just a few weeks ago. Councilmember Strauss, you oversaw this work as the council's budget chair. Plenty of challenges here, including a $250 million budget deficit. Big picture, what messages about the budget did you want to get across?
I think we had a $267 million hole.
It was rising. I remember hearing
when
that.
we
Yep.
got started.
Yep.
And what was even more challenging is that we had a downturn economic forecast mid-budget. What that means for somebody who doesn't do budgeting work, the mayor proposed and transmitted a balanced budget. There was then another hole in that budget that we had to fill.
Right, and economic forecast showed you that the future wasn't looking good for certain taxes.
Right, and in particular, sales tax regarding construction.
Right.
And so one of the ways that we got into this budget, this structural budget deficit, we have the money, but it's a structural budget deficit. The way we got into this was a decade of high growth and low inflation. So we had one-time dollars that we could count on year after year for 10 years.
Yeah.
And when the construction slowed, we didn't have that money.
Yeah.
And at the same time, inflation skyrocketed. Because the city of Seattle is limited to a 1% property tax increase per year, when we have 7% inflation, it can't keep up.
Okay.
And so that's how we got to this situation.
Okay.
How we're going to get out is a step-down approach. If we tried to solve a decade's worth of issues in 1 year, we would be unnecessarily cutting programs and people and services everyday Seattleites rely on. So what we did this year is we did do some trimming. We did make sure to restore some of the funding that maybe wouldn't have gotten cut because there was a nice reserve fund created. We used that reserve fund, created new policies to make sure that that Jumpstart Reserve Fund was refilled and protected for use. And we're going to and we also requested a number of different reports from this year that will help us make good decisions next year in our continued effort of budget reform.
Okay.
I'll tell you, with 6 new council members this year, there was no way that we could have been as successful as we were without starting the Select Budget Committee in April.
That's right. I remember
Most
when you did
years,
that.
the Select Budget Committee starts in September. This year, we started in April. And it was a true pleasure to get to work with my colleagues every step of the way.
6 new council members. That hasn't happened in 100 years. This was a this was a big year.
100 years?
That's what I'm talking about. That's the history of our city here.
All right.
We're talking back to Birth of the Night Landis times.
That was before the Great Depression.
Yeah, that's what I'm telling you.
Right.
So these things do
Was
happen.
there 9 council members at the time?
I wasn't there. I wasn't there. I wasn't there.
That was before Boeing Building Number 2 was
That's right. That's right. 1919.
We were still using the steam plant off the Duwamish.
Good point. Councilmember Saka, maybe some takeaways from your first budget process, accomplishments, things you wish could have happened differently. What do you want to share?
Yeah, so first off, I want to commend and thank my colleague, Councilmember Strauss, chair of the Budget Committee, for leading such a terrific and collaborative and excellent overall process. So kudos, hat tip to you. We got a lot of things done in the face of many challenges. And of course, individuals like myself, We helped them and we made it even better.
Okay, all right, all
You
right.
did. The child care amendments that you brought made
Okay.
it better.
If you don't say so yourself.
Oh,
All
okay,
right.
all right. But no, a couple quick things that I'm proud of about this budget. In addition to all the, I love everything he said about putting us on a more sustainable path to budget reform and initiating that work now. But some specific investments that I'm proud of. Look, I ran on a public safety platform when I was a candidate, and this year we added. The mayor proposed his original proposed budget, and we added at least $16 million of net new investments on top of it, specifically for public safety. I'm proud of the fact that we had historic investments in affordable housing. I'm proud of the fact that we had we funded 2 non-congregate shelters, which could include tiny homes, net new non-congregate shelters in our city. I'm proud of the fact that we increased our tenants' rights, provided more tenant services. Yes, child care program to support working families. Oh, I can go on and on, Brian.
Okay.
We did a lot, like just little nitty-gritty things, like making sure we have proper communication dispatching staff at the call centers so we can have better response times for our non-emergency response.
Okay.
So there's so much in there that we can all, I think, be proud of and ultimately benefits every individual and the tax-paying public that we all serve.
Okay. Let me pull out one piece of something you did not do, which was pass a capital gains tax. I know there was a discussion about this. It was late in the process, so I know a lot of people were concerned about that coming on late. This proposal from Councilmember Moore. I remember that you said at the time it's the right tax but the wrong time, and I wanted to understand what that means. Do you want to try to pass something like this in the future? What can you tell us about a capital gains tax here in the city of Seattle?
It's a great question. So yes, I was proud to co-sponsor because for the budget you need every council member needs 2 co-sponsors, and I was proud to co-sponsor Councilmember Moore's proposed capital gains tax. And ultimately, as you aptly noted, Brian, I ultimately declined to vote yes for it this year, this time around, for 2 reasons. One, so some would say, oh, we either have a massive spending problem. Some would say, no, not that. We have a lack of progressive revenue problem. I think that's a false dichotomy. I categorically reject that false framing. It's a false choice. I think there are compelling elements of both that are true. And so, but irrespective of where you fall on the spectrum of spending versus revenue problem, I think we can all agree that we have an outcomes problem. Brian, we have a results problem.
Okay.
And unless and until we can start making better progress on and showing better results on our existing spending, I just can't, in good faith, because I heard this directly from my constituents over and over and over again during the campaign. We don't mind. We need to make sure people pay their fair share. People don't have a problem with that. But we also, at the same time, in parallel, need to make sure we're starting to see better results. Good news is early indications, way too premature to wave any mission accomplished banners or anything. But, early indications of success since your second term.
Yeah, right.
we took office.
Okay.
Police hiring up.
Sure.
Anyway, so we need to collect more data. And the second reason I ultimately declined to vote yes this time around, Brian, is because of the spending plan. I like some of the options that were included in there that were proposed. But look, I make no apologies about the fact that I'm just a good old-fashioned infrastructure guy. I like supporting and investing in things that put hammers in hands, shovels in grounds, and put people to work. We know we have a huge sidewalk gap. Our bridges need work, and our roads are in a not the best state of repair. So I can't get behind something unless there's a generic kind of infrastructure thing.
Okay.
But let us continue to this conversation, revisit it in the future, because I think it does reflect low-hanging fruit, if you will.
Potentially.
Amongst the options that I've seen so far in terms of net new revenue options.
Yeah, the governor, Washington Governor Jay Inslee is talking about a wealth tax right now in his most recent budget proposal. So a lot of people are talking about this. Some thoughts about a Seattle-based capital gains tax. Councilmember Strauss, what do you think?
Yeah, I voted in favor of it, and I think that it needs more discussion.
Okay.
Right? We are different than the state when we look at substitution effect. It is hard to move out of the state. It's easier to move from Seattle to Shoreline. That's, I think, my chiefest concern, along with the spending plan of we have a structural budget deficit right now. If we're going to fund those programs with that spending, then is that are they not being funded by the general fund anymore?
Yeah.
And are we creating more of a problem down the road because we, much like the conversations about Jumpstart that has been used to fund the general fund in every single year it's been in place.
Right.
But I look at to say we need more discussion because of these loose ends.
Okay.
Right? Not saying yes or no today, just that there's further discussion to be had to make sure that we get the right policy for the city of Seattle.
Thank you very much. I'm going to try to pick up the pace ever so slightly with you, if I could, to work in some more topics here. We're recording the show just a few days before Mayor Harrell is expected to make a big announcement about who our next chief of police is going to be. I know it's his decision, but the council has to confirm this candidate. What do you want to see in a chief? Councilmember Saka.
Yes, absolutely. So you're right. It is ultimately the mayor's decision, subject to our confirmation process at the council level, right? But for me personally, I'm looking for someone who can continue the next wave in delivering the next wave of constitutional policing here in the city of Seattle, can continue to rebuild the department. And reform work is a continuous, ongoing journey. It's a perilous journey towards transformation that we're all on individually and collectively, and this police department is no different. And so someone who can continue that work, take it to the next level, but importantly, someone who is prepared to come in with a plan and ready to execute on how we can more quickly, efficiently, and effectively rebuild our depleted officer staffing. And someone with robust community engagement and stakeholdering skills. Externally in the community, of course, first and foremost, but also can work closely with our offices to advance. We do live in a district system. That is a system that exists today. And work just collaboratively with all stakeholders. Doesn't matter who it is. And so that's kind of what I'm looking for.
Councilmember Strauss, some thoughts about this, and I've been thinking about this a lot because all the focus that's been going on in downtown Seattle, 3rd and Pine, et cetera. I think some people might say, well, take a look. A lot of the street disorder has maybe been pushed into the Chinatown ID and things of that nature. I'm just trying to figure out what you want to see in a new chief and how to handle that piece of it. I know that's the multi-billion-dollar question, really, but what are you looking in a chief? Can a chief try to answer some of those issues with street disorder that we have in Seattle right now?
Yeah, I'll take us a step back to just say when Mayor Charlie Royer passed away, in his obituaries, it was noted that he worked to bring more accountability to the police department. So this is something that's 4 decades of work in the making. So we need to have a chief that will ensure that we have a good, strong accountability and deliver constitutional policing. And in the way that Councilmember Saka was just talking about outcomes, that everyday Seattleites are feeling the outcomes, right? Seattleites don't care, is the money coming from the right pocket or from the left pocket? It's a pair of pants. Right? And so what I would say, if I could have a dream candidate, it would be Chief Kathy O'Toole. I don't think that we'll have her, but as close to that as we can get, because she was able to bring both accountability and a higher service delivery. And so that's what I'm looking for.
Fair enough. I want to try to talk about one last topic, if we can squeeze it in here, because you bring up constitutional policing. The council is going to have a big discussion next year about the SPD and how they handle crowd control. This is a huge situation. The mayor sent down some legislation that would give police more authority to use so-called less lethal weapons, blast balls, tear gas, etc. Councilmember Strauss, you were on the council that passed a ban on a number of these weapons in 2020, 2021. In the wake of the BLM protests, the Department of Justice responded, stopped those bans going into effect. Here we are 3 years later. The city's still working on this, and I just wanted to talk about this. Do you support the mayor's crowd control proposal for the SPD? Where do you want to guide this conversation?
Yeah, this is a conversation that we're digging into up at council right now. It's going to continue after the council recess. And so, again, if you want to ask me what my favorite color is today, I can tell you that.
We're still working on that piece.
It's a deliberative process, and that's the benefit of the legislative department. What I can tell you is in 2020, I did not see a response that was proportional to the issues that they were dealing with, and I think all Seattleites felt that way, and that was where some of this concern came out of. Luckily, we're not in the pandemic anymore. When I started this conversation today, in those 4 months, we had a pandemic, a recession, civil rights reckoning, and civil unrest, right? And so one of those things would knock a normal person down. I'm still standing and sitting with you here today. I never quit working. And when we are not in that spiral of crisis, we're able to be more thoughtful. And that's what I'm happy about today.
Councilmember Saka, some thoughts about crowd control, where you want to guide this policy?
Yeah, I want to make sure our department is best positioned to deliver constitutional policing. I want to make sure that our department is best positioned to, support and not impede the people's constitutional rights, First Amendment rights to gather and protest and freedom of speech and assembly and all those things.
Yep.
And also want to make sure, bad actors aren't allowed to commit bad acts unfettered.
Yeah.
And, we protect people's personal safety and property rights as well at the same time. And I think both of those things can coexist in parallel. And so, I'm going to be looking at this. I generally like the principle of having flexibility, but also putting some guardrails around some of the most sensitive use cases. And so that's kind of generally how I'm going to be approaching it.
Okay.
We are, as Councilmember Strauss aptly noted, we are going through our deliberative process right now.
Okay.
So stay tuned.
Okay.
But I think you can expect a thoughtful bill that flows from this, regardless of wherever we land. And I appreciate the mayor's proposal and his partnership in working on this so far and any number of issues on public safety.
Fair enough. Lightning round here. I'm going to try to blaze through one question we got in from a viewer. It's transportation-based. I'm going to throw it your way. Sure. Eric has this. Right now, you get a $250 ticket for speeding by as little as 5 miles per hour over the 20-mile-per-hour school speed limit, thanks to traffic cameras and doubled fines. Meanwhile, people can street race at 60 miles an hour down Aurora or on school streets off hours with absolutely zero enforcement. How about a little common sense, Eric asks. You could mail warnings to people going at least 5 miles over the limit, ticket after a warning for people going 10 miles over the limit, and a ticket for the first offense for people going 15 miles per hour over the limit. Wanted to throw that out there. I know you've been dealing a lot with traffic cameras and trying to control speed in a lot of neighborhoods around Seattle. What do you think of that idea?
First off, thank you, Brian. Shout out to Erica. Thank you for asking such a great question.
Yeah.
Love it. First off, I'll say this. I think from a state perspective, I don't mean to dive too deep into the wonky
Might have some issues here.
Policy issues, but I think there might be a prohibition of some sort for school enforcement cameras off to send automated tickets off hours or during. So I don't know for sure, but I suspect it's not quite that.
Appreciate you engaging with this.
But that said, there's still the issue of non-school speed enforcement cameras, and which is why because the same issue manifests itself across the issue, and in my own District 1, huge known problem areas, Elki and Harbor Avenue, where there's a lot of runners that generally go, but people go to congregate and gather and celebrate. But it's all over. It's all over the city, and Councilmember Strauss has his own challenges, in his own district, and which is why the good news in this most recent budget, we funded $1.34 million for the executive department to deploy non-school speed cameras.
Okay.
And also, there's some funding that was set aside under the mayor's original proposal to expand the number of school speed cameras.
Okay.
So this is an issue that's really near and dear to me personally, my constituents, and it's an issue that we will continue to make investments in. And I want these cameras set up yesterday, to be honest.
Okay.
But we need to do it thoughtfully as well. So.
Okay. Councilmember Strauss, I want to make sure I snuck this in. You serve on the Sound Transit Board. They're trying to come up with a cool name for the light rail station set to open in 2026 near 130th and Roosevelt. Is it going to be North Seattle Boogie Land, or what are we looking at here?
We're not going to call it that. North Seattle, Pinehurst, 130th, and a mix of these combinations are up for debate. If it was up to me, I would name it Council President Deborah Juarez Station. Without Council President Deborah Juarez, that station would not be a reality. Unfortunately, that's against the rules. So the survey is live now until December 23rd for everyone to have their voice heard. You can check out my newsletter, or you can check out the Sound Transit website to fill out the survey and vote on your preference. So we'd love to hear from you. Even though we can't name it Deborah Juarez.
All right, we'll see what we can do there. Thank you very much.
But you can write it in, I guess.
Okay, write-in votes. We've got to have those. That's Councilmember Dan Strauss. That's Councilmember Rob Saka. Thank you both for being here. We'll see you next time on Council Edition.